You're listening to The Artist Athlete, episode 60. This podcast is dedicated to circus. It's a place for professionals in the industry to share their stories, viewpoints, and information, and a place for outsiders to get a sneak peek into this world. Hey friends, fans, and enemies, I'm Shannon McKenna. I have missed doing that intro. I'm the host of the Artist Athlete podcast, as well as the founder of The Artist Athlete, an online company dedicated to spreading information about circus as an art form and training education specifically for aerial artists. If you are just tuning into the podcast this week, welcome. I am kind of a one-woman show, except for the amazing people over at Shared Cultured Concepts who do my editing every week. And that was getting really difficult for me. So I hired a wonderful human whose name is Hannah to help me out with the podcast. And I can pay Hannah thanks to my amazing Patreons. If you want to help pay Hannah for her hard work, you can go to patreon.com/theartistathlete. And the reason I'm bringing Hannah up is she is special to today's podcast in two ways. She's special in a lot of ways, but two that are relevant for today's episode. The first is that Hannah is Australian. And if y'all don't know, there are devastating bushfires happening in Australia right now, and I'm doing a huge fundraiser through the Artist Athlete. So far, we've raised 3,000 Australian dollars that's going directly to firefighters and wildlife rescue organizations. I want to give a shout out to Ali C, Maggie M, Alyssa B, Laura S, Rachel H, Rachel W, Leah G, Emma H, Fei Chi Y, Elsa K, Adrian F, Sarah B, Danny K, Allison D, Ashley M, Katie N, Fiona HD, Seda A, Jennifer G, and Rebecca E, all of whom have donated to the cause. If you want a shout out on next week's podcast episode, donate any amount of money to an official non-government organization in Australia and email a screenshot of the receipt. Anyone who donates $150 USD or more gets a private one-on-one lesson with me to help you out with your aerial technique. And if you're not an aerialist, if you don't want or need help, we can just chill and talk for 30 minutes. I'm down for that too. So the way that works is you donate the money, you take a screen cap of the receipt, you email that screen cap to info@theartistathlete.com, and we shout you out. Thank you guys so much for all the funds we've raised so far. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. The other reason Hannah is special is because she's a swinging trapeze artist. I met her at the studio of a man named Victor Format, who is the grandfather of swinging trapeze. He lives here in Montreal, and Hannah is one of his students. And every day I come in, I take straps with another coach who works at Victor's studio, and I ask Hannah all of these questions about swinging trapeze because it's a very different discipline than a lot of others, even in the aerial arts. And I said, Hannah, I think I need to have a swinging trapeze artist on the show. We haven't had one on the Artist Athlete podcast yet. And Hannah was like, oh, you need to talk to my buddy, Eric. And so Hannah, partially because it's her job and also because she's awesome, gave me his contact information and set me up with an amazing Skype interview with Eric McGill. Eric is a Canadian swinging trapeze artist based in the United Kingdom. He started his acrobatic career at the age of 7 as a competitive trampolinist. In 2010, he graduated from the National Circus School in Montreal. With his swinging trapeze and straps act, he has worked in cabarets, big tented shows, and large outdoor festivals all around the world, including Germany, Mexico, Australia, Canada, and the UK. And of course, because it's me, I ran really long with this interview and have decided to split it into two parts. The first part of the interview, which we'll play today, is about swinging trapeze as a discipline, how long it takes, why it's so hard, how to lunge it, and you'll find out what a lunger is during this interview as well, what rigging goes behind it. And even if you're not a swinging trapeze artist or have no interest in the discipline, I think it might still be an interesting interview for you to tune into anyway, just to appreciate and understand what goes into the discipline. Next week, Eric will talk about some of the amazing creative projects he's involved in the UK. But for now, let's hear all about swinging trapeze in my interview with Eric McGill. Thanks for doing this random little project.
I'm quite excited about it. I've been listening to your podcast for a while now, so this is quite a cool thing for me.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, cool. So you know, like, kind of the general gist of it. I'll give you my like spiel that I give to my guests, which is that you're allowed to swear. So feel free.
Great.
Like, don't feel like you need to censor yourself. If you say something that you're like, oh shit, like that was actually a really mean thing to say, or like, actually, I have no idea what I'm talking about right now. That sounded really dumb, or something like that. You can just say that to me and be like, can you cut that out? And I'll be like, yeah, sure. We'll like take a pause and then pick the conversation, try to sound natural, like pick it back up. And then if I say something that's wrong, don't be polite. Like, feel free to interrupt me and be like, actually, that's not the way that works at all.
Okay.
Yeah, because you know far more about like swinging trapeze in your world than I do. So yeah, don't think you're being rude or whatever.
Okay.
I think that's about it. Do you have any questions for me?
The only question I've been kind of thinking about today is like, why me? Like, why am I interesting? But I don't know. If it's not interesting, then we can just cut that, I guess.
No, that's a really valid question. Yeah, because I am really intentional about like who I pick and why I pick guests. Basically, Hannah, who I've kind of like brought on as my assistant to help me like book people because life gets in the way, and I was like, I want to keep doing this, but I need some help. And so I turned to her one day and I was like, I want a swinging trapeze artist because I haven't had one on the podcast yet. It's such to my mind, a bizarre discipline. And we can talk about that. So I was like, who do you know who's like doing cool things? Who's like, and so I was like, Hannah, who do you know who's like a great swinging trapeze artist, who's like done some stuff with their life, who can like speak about things eloquently and would be good for the podcast? And she was like, Eric McGill, he would be perfect. I was like, great, let's do it. So you were a reference is how I got your name.
Cool. Yeah. It was cool hearing from Hannah. I was like, the message came through as artist athlete, and it's like, hey, it's Hannah. And I'm like, because we saw each other like a month ago. Oh, nice. I was staying at Terry's house. So like, I ended up spending the whole night talking to Hannah, and like while I was there, so like,
she's
cool,
lovely.
It's a small world. She is.
Her. Yeah, she's lovely. Yeah. And also, I know you worked for No Fit State, which is like one of my favorite companies. So.
Yeah.
I was like.
Yeah, well, I kind of worked for them. I have worked for them in the past, and then I kind of work for them at the moment only as a teacher. I'm not actually on a touring show with them at the minute.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. But you've done stuff with them in the past or toured with them?
I've done 3 shows with them, at least. Yeah, I was mostly working on a strand of the company that doesn't exist anymore. So there was sort of, NoFit always had 2 shows. So they always had the No Fit States tented shows, which is sort of probably what they're more famous for. And then they have the No Fit State, what they call the community arm of the company. Mm-hmm. And that's more, it's sort of social circus, but it's also sort of trying to be like a pathway for aspiring and emerging artists to go through to then enter the industry. So it goes from like the classes they teach to you can go on and then be like a trainee. And then they have these productions that they create. And sometimes they're just like one-offs, but then other times previously, they would take sort of a variety of professional and emerging performers and put them all in a show together so we can all learn from each other and tour that. And that tended to be outdoors, like outdoor sort of immersive promenade shows in general,
Okay.
but they've
Yeah.
done lots
Yeah.
of different
Cool.
things.
Cool.
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen those are like their garden shows or things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they've done
Yeah.
different versions of it over the years. Yeah, usually centering around one director. The woman who was in charge of that community arm and sort of spearheading the sort of emerging artist side of things decided to leave the company and move in a different direction with their own projects now. And she's doing amazing stuff now, but it's separate from what No Fit's doing.
I see. Cool.
Yeah.
Sweet. Man, I feel like I'm gonna have to like cut and paste that whole explanation.
Oh yeah.
Put it somewhere else in the interview. All right, sweet. Well, yeah. So Eric McGill, welcome to the Artist Athlete Podcast. And you listen to the podcast. I can't believe that. It's so weird. I mean, of course people do because that's the purpose of the podcast. But it's still weird to me when people are like, "Oh yeah, I listen to this." But
it's a great podcast.
Well, thank you. So the first thing I always ask people is to kind of like explain what they do in their own words. So that's what I'll ask you to do now. Yeah.
I would say on the face of it, I am a swinging trapeze artist. That's my degree. I did the ENC National Circus School Montreal route, but I've been working for about 10 years now. And probably in the last 3 years, I do swinging trapeze. That's still my job. But I've sort of found myself maybe splintering into different projects. So I'm working on a project now with a company called Pirates of the Caribbean, where we're doing swinging trapeze tricks, but on the vertical. So we're doing counterweighted swinging trapeze, where I'm twisting, but as the trapeze drops. I'm doing a lot of teaching. I teach for the No Fit State Circus here where I work in Cardiff. I started doing my own shows as well. I did R&D for a circus and virtual reality project last year with the director that I had started working with in No Fit State about the sort of experience of doing specifically trapeze, but we're expecting to expand that out to all circus disciplines. I do straps as well as a performer. That's sort of like my main two is straps and swinging. If I want, a lot of companies have me do both in the same show. And I do a pretty good mix of the contemporary world and the traditional world. So I've worked with No Fit State for years. I've worked a bunch with the Tohu. I've worked with the Fingers. I've worked with the Waz. But then I've also worked for Circus Flick Flack in Germany. I'm going to Roncalli next week.
Nice.
And I've done some trad shows in Portugal with lions and tigers and horses and the whole shebang. So that's a summary of what I do.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So you're the first swinging trapeze artist I've had on the show. And I definitely feel like it's a crazy discipline to me. Did you start at the National Circus School with swinging? Or had you trained before?
Well, it's kind of hard to count what I did before. I had done swinging trapeze before I came to ENC. My original background was trampoline. I was a trampolinist for 10 years. I was a competitive trampolinist.
Okay.
And our little studio had a trapeze in it, a little static, unweighted piece of crap trapeze. And I would swing about on that and I got into this trip of standing up on the bar, pushing it up as high as I could. And my goal was to swing the trapeze up basically to horizontal so I could kick this light that was in the ceiling.
Classic.
Yeah, and I just started getting more adventurous with that.
Did you ever go all the way around? Or could you not?
Oh,
was the ceiling in the way?
The ceiling was unfortunately in the way, as it often is. So yeah, that's that. I just started being more experimental with that. I did do a couple of classes. I moved to Toronto for a year and did some classes in some circus schools there that don't exist anymore. I was swinging in like a nightclub in the day, like in the docks in downtown Toronto. And yeah, I'd say my real swinging training started when I came and met Victor in 2007 with ENC, with the National Circus School.
Okay. And so when you auditioned for ENC, did you go in asking to be a swinging trapeze artist, or did they select you and say, you're doing swinging trapeze now?
So originally, I came in with static trapeze and trampoline. Mm-hmm. I said, I kind of pushed my trampoline. I was like, oh, I'm a really good acrobat. I wasn't great, but I was fine. I was like, you should take me because I'm a good trampolinist. And then was like, oh yeah, I'd like to do static trapeze, but also I'm good at trampoline, by the way. And I went and I saw they do these presentations when you're doing the auditions, the third years do their acts. And I saw, I don't know if you know him, but Gary Drol.
No,
he's a French swinging trapezist. He mostly teaches now, but he still performs. And he did his number, which was this combination spoken words poem about him being this creepy child, and then got up on the trapeze and did some really violent, vicious, amazing trapeze that I'd never seen before. I'd never seen swinging done like that. And I changed. They make you fill out a form at the beginning of the auditions, and then make you fill out another form at the end of the auditions. And I scratched out static trapeze. I'm like, no, I'm doing swinging trapeze after that moment. And I've stuck with it ever since.
Nice. That's awesome. So it's actually kind of coming to my mind that maybe some people in the audience don't actually know what swinging trapeze is. Could you explain it?
Oh, yeah. So swinging trapeze, a trapeze is just a bar, a steel bar hung from two ropes that swings back and forth.
Yeah.
And usually what people think when they hear swinging trapeze, they think flying trapeze. So they think dismounts and releases to a catcher.
Right. They think standing on a board, there's a net underneath you and you go across and someone grabs you out of the air.
Exactly. And there is an acrobatic element to what I do, but I'm on my own. It's a different look to the trapeze. So it's cotton ropes instead of steel cables. And I'm usually standing on the bar, swinging back and forth and using the dead point to flip or twist or drop to my hands or my feet. And yeah, I'm up there by myself, swinging back and forth with a line. So I have a belt that goes around my waist that lets me turn and flip inside of it. And I have someone on the other end of that line holding me up in case I fall off. And then I have a backup, like a little bungee. So if I fall all the way off and tumble, I don't hit the floor. I fall into this sort of stretchy elastic that cushions the fall.
Oh, and that's in addition to the lunger.
Yeah, so the lunger's there for, the lunger can kind of clean stuff up, but then the bungee is there in case of, emergencies.
Gotcha.
Because sometimes you do need to just fall off. That's the safest thing to do.
Oh, interesting. Because if you try to save it, what happens?
Well, sometimes, so if you fall behind the trapeze, so the swing swings back and forward. So if you fall inside the swing, what can happen is you're falling, the lunger holds you up, and then the trapeze swings into you. And the bar is the most dangerous bit. Like my trapeze weighs 16 kilos at least, and is made of steel. So all of my injuries from trapeze have been from the bar hitting me in some kind of way.
Holy crap. I didn't realize it was that heavy.
It's heavy, and they're always getting heavier. I probably have one of the lighter trapezes in the industry, because I've been doing it for a while, but every year, this is mostly spearheaded by my coach, Victor Fomin. He wants more weight. It makes the dead point longer. It makes the power that you can push. So when you're doing tricks on trapeze, you're pushing against that weight, and that weight then pushes back at you. So the more weight there is, the more pushback you can get, and the bigger, more extraordinary tricks you can do as a result.
I see. Oh, that's interesting. That's funny because last night I have a really, really light system for my straps. And Victor came over to me and he was like, you need more weight on the top of your point for your straps. And I was like, why? So it's funny to think, but I still can't figure out why he would want that for me.
Oh, I know the answer to that if
Really?
you're
Why?
interested.
Well, yeah.
Uh,
What is the answer?
the reason is because straps weigh basically nothing. It's not heavier than the pulley system that's pulling it up and down. And particularly because in Victor's studio, it's so high and there's so much rope.
Yeah.
Like, so that the system he has is like above your straps, there's a cable and it goes to a pulley and then into another pulley and then down to a block and tackle. So there's the weight of the pulleys and the rope and all the carabiners attaching that all together. And that's heavier than your straps. So if there isn't weight above your straps will just fly up into the ceiling. The pulley system will crash down to the floor and then you'll be left with nothing.
Nothing. I know, but you can put a weight, like they have like those swivel weights that give enough weight to it. I actually hate having weight because then I feel like I start to get a spin on the weight itself. They kind of spin that. Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. And the solution to that is you need to counterweight the pulley system. I learned this from Circular Waza's riggers. They do this really ingenious thing where they have everything is the same as it is at Victor's, but there's one little piece of like chicken string really that attaches to the top of the pulley system up to a pulley and then down to a sandbag, and the sandbag is as heavy as the combined weight of all the rope and the pulleys. So then you're at equilibrium and you don't need to put any weight above your straps.
Oh my God, that's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah. So whenever that's what I do now in my shows, because then you don't have to worry about loading loads of weight on the top of your straps, right, which can really fuck up your spins. And if you're doing flares and things, it kind of pulls you out in a weird way.
Yep.
So counterweight your pulley system and that'll fix your problem.
Dude, thanks. This is the most beneficial. This is why I had you on the podcast, Eric. I knew you'd have all the secrets.
Well, this is, I didn't mention this in my summary of what I do, but I'm also pretty much for the whole swinging Victor industry, I'm everybody's help desk.
Oh, really?
So, I mean, it's Christmas season. So at the moment, I've just rigged for 3-4 different people who are going into their gigs now for the first time. Like I was helping Diza help rig her trapeze in Florida. I was helping Milena and her job in Washington. And people come to me with these things. So I'm happy to help if I can.
My understanding is that swinging trapeze, like unlike other aerialists, like I am, or like if I have I'm also a tissue artist. And so when I bring my tissue somewhere, I need my swivel, like I need my system, but I can rig to whatever's in the ceiling, or I can rig to my pulley. But my understanding is swinging trapeze artists also have they have the actual bar, the crane bar that you guys swing.
Oh, yeah.
Is that right?
It is incredibly complex. My favorite setup for a swinging trapeze bar is in a tent, because that's sort of where swinging trapeze was born. And it's typically the easiest place to rig it because the length of the ropes is really important. So you can't just hang yourself any old way from the ceiling, because I have 4-meter ropes. And so the pivot point, my crane bar, which is like a separate sort of tube, quite a solid piece of metal that's above my head when I'm swinging, that needs to be a certain distance away from the bar that I'm standing on, 4 meters for me. And it also needs to be rock solid. It can't go up and down. It can't go back and forth, because when I'm doing my tricks, then all of a sudden the trapeze shifts in some way and I miss my hand and I fall to my death. Not death, but yeah. And that's really complex. So the bar above my head is rigged from 2 points at least, and then has 4 wires going down to anchor points. They're usually the tent poles of the tent that I'm swinging in. Then I need another set of pulleys for my safety line, which goes up to my crane bar and then over to another point in the ceiling maybe, and then down to wherever my lunger is standing. And that is the minimum, because then you have to think about, how does that get out of everybody's way for the rest of the show? Bro,
that's nuts.
Like my act takes up the whole room, which is beautiful when you see it. Like it fills the space, the air, the floor, and that's wonderful. But it's not wonderful when my act is over and then the wheel of death has to come in and figure out how to do their act around my rigging.
Yeah, sure. Where did you learn all of this setup? Do they teach it to you at school?
I hope they've changed, but ENC didn't really do a good job of setting you up
Huh.
for rigging, or at least they didn't while I was there. They did the basics. They said, this is a carabiner, this is a shackle, this is the way you should set it up in our space. But their space is really ideal. Like their space is
it's incredible.
It is incredibly perfect. Never will you have a situation where you get to rig in such ideal circumstances. Like even if you're setting up in a tent, it's pretty ideal. But when I was at school, I didn't put the pulleys in the ceiling. I didn't clip my lunge onto the bar. I clipped my trapeze onto their pre-existing permanent structure. All the lunges, all the pulleys, everything. The space was cleared on my behalf. Like the floor needs to be clear. Like I can't have I've had problems where, someone wants to stick a big Christmas tree or something in the middle of my swing that can't be there. And ENZ totally takes care of that. So they tell you the sort of fundamentals and they teach you best practice, but sometimes best practice isn't always available. So I guess, where did I learn it? I learned in a formal ways. I did a really intensive 2-week course that Cirque Éloise offered a few years ago. And I've just been really curious. I just ask. Like all the people who know better than me, I ask them why they're doing it that way. I ask them, oh, is that right for me? If we could do it this way, is this not better because I've seen it done this way? Because sometimes people are set it up and, oh, that's perfect, but I don't recognize what they've done. And I ask them, well, why this and not this other way? And sometimes they have an answer, which is, oh, this is the only way we can do it because of, the circumstances or the way that the rigging is or the way that the points line up in the ceiling. Or they'll go, oh, I've never thought about doing it that way. And actually that would be better. And we change it around.
Cool.
And I still do that now. Like, even though I feel like I kind of know my shit now, but like, you still got to be curious and you still got to ask questions because, we're imperfect human beings and people make mistakes and oversights. So yeah, just asking.
I have another, I feel like this is a really shady question, but it's worth, I don't know, I'm curious about your perspective on, people joke all the time that swinging trapeze is like, it's not there to make you money. It's a passion discipline because it's so expensive to train, especially if you're not in the school, right? And then all of the materials and everything you've just described. And then the space required for it is obviously not as accessible as if you're, say, a hand balancer or something like that. Do you agree with that? Is the price of that you can ask as a performer more because of all of those factors?
To do swinging trapeze, it's hard to be a Sunday painter. You really have to go all in.
Wait, a Sunday painter? Expression.
A Sunday painter is someone who has like a normal job during the week, but only paints on Sundays.
Okay, got it. Okay, that's awesome. Cool. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, it really takes a full involvement of your life and, unfortunately, of your finances. It's not impossible to do swinging trapeze and make money. Trapeze has been my main source of income for the last 10 years. And that 10 years hasn't been spent working solidly for any one company at any point. Like the longest gig I've ever done was 9 months.
Oh, wow.
In that time.
Huh.
So I'll do 2 months here. I'll do Christmas with these people. I'll do a summer tour. I'll do a couple of galas, a couple of festivals. And I've been really fortunate. I've been really lucky to be able to do that. I know a lot of people will find their company and just kind of hunker down with them. Soleil is a great example of how you can hold on to a job with Soleil and they want you to for years. And that's a great place to swing. But then if you look at different companies around the world, you can work for No Fit State, swinging for them. There's, Cirque Bust in France, and they've got a swinging show that they they've been touring in different forms for, oh, God knows how long, at least 10 years at least. But then it'll be the same people you'll see in those companies. And even in the traditional world, you'll have the same swinging trapezes coming back all the time because, it's hard. It's hard to get consistent work, and you need consistent work to pay for all the rigging and things that swinging requires. That being said, it's not impossible to do it on the cheap. I'm lucky that where I train, I can train for free. I swing with friends who lunge me as a favor or because I'm also going to lunge them. And then I've got friends who've got little bits that I can borrow. And for me, circus is all about community, and we're all here to help each other because nobody's making any money. So we might as well help each other out. I went on like a 5-month tour with a friend of mine's crane bar because she didn't need it. I've borrowed guy lines from companies, and I've, swapped shackles with people who had the right size that I needed. And I mean, there is a certain amount of risk with that because things aren't mine. I don't know their history and their level of safety, but you learn to trust the right people and not to trust the right people. And that's the best you can do sometimes. And yeah, just asking lots of questions, because if people don't know when it's time to throw a rope away, they might loan it to you without knowing any better, because there's no professional level of standards for these things. So yeah, it is a passion discipline. I'm certainly passionate about what I do. I wouldn't have kept going this long if I wasn't. But I think there's a real career out there for people, and now more than ever. I see more people in swinging roles across the world, and in good paying swinging roles, more than ever before at the moment.
That's awesome to hear.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. When it comes to artistic development in swinging trapeze, I'm always curious about this because it and flying trapeze to me feel very much like the story or the impact of the actual action is so great that you can kind of get away with not having much of a character. I don't mean to insult, but do you know what I mean? There's such a impact or drama of the actual skills themselves. And how important, or what is your approach to layering character or story or movement on top of the technique?
Well, swinging trapeze is tough. Like I said, it really is all involving. It takes so much training, really a committed 3 years just to get your technique to a level that is a professional standard is required to just learn the moves. And I do mean the moves, because really in our discipline, almost unlike any other, you need certain tricks in your act to be taken seriously. I wish that wasn't the case, because I think it kind of stifles creativity. But if you're not doing a double twist and a twist to stand, Soleil ain't gonna look at you twice. And that's pretty true across the board. Not exclusively. There are other companies that look for different things, and there are other companies that are just not particularly educated on the subject. And the difficulty with swinging trapeze is, a big part of it is there's very few people teaching it. So the level of diversity in training is very small. There isn't much diversity. And if you want to do something new or do something creative, it's really hard. It's really hard. And you have to go through so many punches to the face, bars slamming into your legs, falling off into the bungee. I've cracked ribs. I've bruised my coccyx 1,000 times. And I've thrown loads of tricks in the garbage because they're not possible. I feel like I've done a good amount of research into what new things are possible and what different things are possible. But it was really difficult. It took a really long time. And
do you have some things just that were close? Do you have any things from the garbage that you're why doesn't this just work?
Oh God. Oh, so many. What did I have to abandon? Okay, this is a little hard to describe,
Okay.
but I used to do what in Quebec they call a Napoleon demi-tour. So for anyone listening, probably knows what that means. But what it is it's you're hanging by your knees and your hands are in the ropes. When you reach the front of the swing, you let go your hands, but keep your knees.
Wait, your hands
So
are
you
holding
do,
on to the ropes.
yes.
Yeah.
So you're basically sitting, but your knees are hooked on rather than your butt.
Got it.
And you release your hands, you fall backwards, you do like a rotation backwards around the bar. Just before you be back to sitting again, you do a half turn and catch the bar with your hands. So now that's a trick that exists. That's not my trick.
Okay.
But the trick that I worked on for a while was that, but with 1.5 twists.
Whoa.
And that was going great. I was training that for a good couple months, and it was getting pretty solid. I was working on it with Victor, and we were sort of talking about the possibility of it. And I messed it up once. And rather than doing 1.5 twists, I just did 1 twist, and I kind of got stuck, and I couldn't keep twisting. I did something wrong. It wasn't because something hit me, but like I messed it up and didn't get all the way around. And so the bar came up and it hit me really hard in the back of, not in the head, but like in my upper shoulders. And I was like, and I like fell into the bungee. It was safe. But I realized like, oh, I can never make that mistake again. Like I was really lucky. I came up, I didn't get the bar. It hit me in a safe place and I fell. But that bar hit me hard. And if that bar had hit me in the back of the head, I'd have been done.
Whoa.
So I had to throw that, like, right, this trick isn't worth the risk that it requires. And I know other people who have had other similar tricks. My friend Nikolai had this amazing move. I hope he does it again because he's stupid enough to try it. But he's standing on the bar, and at the back of the swing, he does a backflip from standing, falls back and catches the bar in his hands, which is incredible. And he got it pretty solid, but he also had a lot of days where he took the bar in the teeth.
Oh, yeah. Whoa. Oh, my God.
So,
my mouth hurts just thinking about that. Oh, my God.
So,
how are you? Is there a certain personality type that's just crazy enough to do this shit? Like, people say that to me with straps, and I'm like, no, there's, like, I'm not letting go of anything. You know, like, I know where I am in relation to my apparatus at all times. Whereas, like, you guys are, like, throwing yourself through the air. Like, what's the mental aspect of all of this?
I think to be a swinging trapezist, it takes, on so many levels, courage. And, like, not just, obviously, abandoning your regular life and dedicating yourself to a discipline takes a huge amount of courage, like just to enter the circus world, but to throw yourself around the way that you need to on swinging is really, it takes a lot of bravery and it takes a lot of abandon. You need to trust your body. You need to place yourself in a shape and wait. And maybe you'll get it wrong, but you can't know until the trick finishes, the trick ends. And there's a huge moment of like, ooh, where you can mess it up because you hesitate or because your body, when it feels threatened, crunches. Like you bend at the waist, you bend at the knees, you pull your arms into, like, you go into the fetal position. And that is the worst thing you can do on swinging trapeze. You need to be, for almost everything, open and tense and splayed outwards in a very vulnerable shape, ready to catch the trapeze so that you can be in line with the trapeze. If you finish a trick and you're scrunched, then as soon as the trapeze swings past the vertical, it's going to correct you. It's going to straighten you out. And that's when you can fall off. It's that shock of being suddenly straightened out and ripped apart that will pull you off the trapeze and pull you down. So you need to do the trick strong, finish strong, and stay. And to have the courage to stay tight like that for the whole journey of the trick. And it's not just one trick. Like it's trick, 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 trick. It's the whole sequence, it'll be one after another on each end of the swing. So you need a real mental toughness to be able to sustain that.
Dude, I think I needed Xanax just thinking about it. Did your trampolining help you with any of this?
I didn't think so at the time, but I think now looking back on it, I think it really did, because swinging trapeze is is so much easier than trampoline. It's all about aerial awareness. So when you're on a trampoline, you're jumping up and down. You need to, again, hit the bed of the trampoline in just the right way, like you do on trapeze. But then that moment of precision is so extended that it's the whole length of the jump. And in trampoline, I'm flipping and I'm twisting and I'm landing and I'm pushing and I'm opening at the right moments and keeping all of my body positions in the right alignment so I can get a low score. But trapeze, I'm only ever flipping or I'm only ever twisting. There's a sort of ease and a simplicity to the types of movements you have on swinging. It's not that there aren't people trying to push the limit and do twisting flips, but that's not coming out yet. People aren't quite getting to that level yet. So that kind of aerial awareness is really transferable, because on trampoline, you always need to know where the little red cross on the trampoline is, because that's your point of reference. That's where you need to land. And trapeze is the same. You always need to know where the bar is. Through almost all your tricks, you can watch the bar turn. You can spot it on your way round as you flip or as you twist. And that's your point of reference. It's moving, but so are you. And that's really similar.
How much is the lunger responsible for some of the work that you do?
It depends on how tired I am. Some days, a lot. So I think a good swinging trapezist can do their act start to finish if the lunger doesn't show up. They're just clipped into the bungee. Probably don't tell me that he didn't show up to work that day. It'll kind of mess with my head. But they should be able to do their act solidly without them. But that kind of robotic consistency is, especially because what we do is so precise, is too much to ask of a person, really. Some days you're tired. Some days you catch a little bit wrong, and that can really throw you off. So what the lunger's job is what they're there to do is polish, finish, keep you safe. They can get you that extra inch on the bar so you're not catching it with your fingertips, you're catching it with your whole hand. They can, get you that little bit further, so give you a little extra time. So if you got lost, when I'm doing this twist where I go twist and I land standing on the bar, I get lost a lot, especially when I'm in a new space with lights. But they can give me that little extra moment to find the trapeze again and see, oh, right, okay, there are the ropes. And just, yeah, sort of finesse it.
Like someone who is a lunger has also done swinging trapeze. What is it, a separate training? How do you get a good lunger?
It's a huge asset if your lunger also does swinging trapeze, because they know your mistakes before you make them. You can see as a lunger, if you've done swinging trapeze, you can see, oh, they're going too early. They're going to need my help. They're going too late. They're going to fall off. But when I teach my lungers I've taught people to lunge me that have never seen a trapeze before. My first lesson with them is, this is a trapeze. I'm going to get up there and I'm going to swing back and forth, standing on the bar. You're going to hold me up as I do flips and twist. Like, it's really basic, but they can learn it. You're just kind of teaching them a choreography sometimes, so that when I do my back salto, I tell them, pull the line through so you're letting me come up, but then block and hold on tight so you don't let me come down. Now, there's a kind of play, and usually I use a scale of like 1 to 10, like, okay, this trick needs a 2, this trick needs a 5, of how much they need to be holding on.
Okay.
But it does take a special kind of person. I think it takes, to be honest, a similar level of courage as the swinging trapezes themselves. I think the worst lunger is someone who is very nervous. If they are way too scared for my safety, they'll hold too much. And a bad lunger can really ruin you, can really put you in danger and can really mess up your whole routine. They can totally shut you down because you're attached to that line, right? So if you're trying to go forwards and they're pulling you up, then you're not going. They're going to win every time.
That was part 1 of my interview with Eric McGill, and he cleared a lot up for me. Every day I go in the studio and Victor's standing off, lunging, yelling up in the sky at someone in French, and it's amazing to watch, but I don't really know what I'm watching. So it was super cool to sit down and talk to Eric and get some tips about rigging and hear about his experience. What this interview did for me, even though I'm not a swinging trapeze artist, was it really inspired me with the dedication that they have to their craft. Like Eric said, it takes about 3 years to get to a professional level at swinging trapeze. And the training isn't easy physically or logistically. It requires a lot of space. It requires a good coach who knows what they're talking about and can also physically pull you and help you understand the tricks that you're trying to learn. So thank you, Eric, for coming on. Everybody else, thanks for tuning in. Next week, I'm going to continue talking to Eric. He has some really awesome projects that he's got going on in the UK that we chatted about, and we talked about counterweight systems. We talk about a whole bunch of other stuff, so get really excited for that. And if you want a little sneak peek, you should go check his website out. He's got a lot of really cool stuff on it. It's ericmcgill.net. ERICMCGILL.net, ericmcgill.net. And he's on Instagram at Eric_McGill. Nice job, Eric. How did you score that? Or is that 2 underscores? I don't know. Try them both out. You'll find him. As for me, for training tips and aerial inspiration, you can find me on Instagram. I'm at _artist_athlete. That's also where I post a bunch of information about the fundraiser for Australia. My website is theartistathlete.com. I'm on Facebook, The Artist Athlete. And to support this podcast, patreon.com/theartistathlete. No underscores there, just all one big old long word. Thanks for tuning in, friends, fans, and enemies. I'll talk at you next week. The Artist Athlete podcast is supported solely by donations from people like you. Here's what some of those people have to say.
Aloha! My name is Beth Russell, and I live on the beautiful island of Maui, Hawaii. I am an aerial artist and movement instructor specializing in chakra yoga to keep me balanced and grounded. I play with silks, trapeze, lyra, rope, acro, aerial yoga and dance, slacklining, pole, bungee, and climbing. Really anything that goes up and allows me to explore 3D space. You can find my dedicated aerial page on Instagram at Maui Aerialist. If you find yourself coming to Maui, let's play.
Hey there, friends, fans, and enemies. This is Chris Alston, Patreon of the Artist Athlete podcast. Straps artist and lyra performer and acrobat out of Greenville, South Carolina. So, if you're ever passing through, make sure to stop in and see me and my friends. We have a wonderful space, and we'd love to see you.
Hi, my name is Erica Lee. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm an aerialist. I teach performing arts to elementary school during the day and do pole and slings and rope by night. I really, really like the Artist Athlete podcast because it gives me a lot of circus goals to look forward to. It gives me a lot of insight on what's going on around the world in circus. And that's why I'm Patreon.
Hello, all. Thank you for tuning in to the Artist Athlete podcast. I am Opal Schwartz from Minneapolis, Minnesota. If you're ever in the cities, feel free to stop by the Aviary Minneapolis. It's a great time. With that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and goodbye.